Hey everyone, welcome to Future Ready Today, the #1 podcast focused on the future of work. Every day I break down the top stories to help you find the signals and trends that you should be paying attention to so that you can be future ready today. It is Wednesday, April 8th, 2026, and you might not know this, but this is actually take 2. I started recording and I was through the first story pretty much, talking for 15 minutes, and then the internet went out. So, because I care about you all so much and because I wanted to get this episode out there, we are now trying again, and hopefully the internet will not cut out this time. Today there are just 3 stories that I want to get to, but very, I think, important stories. Story number 1, Gen Z workers who are sabotaging AI rollouts. Story number 2, Project Glasswing from Anthropic. We're going to explore what that is, what that means for you. And then story number 3, Google's AI overviews are wrong 1 in 10 times. And again, it might not seem like a lot, but when we get to the numbers, you're going to realize it's actually a massive, massive number. So let's get right into the first story of the day. It's a new report from enterprise AI firm Writer. Based on a survey of 2,400 knowledge workers across the US, UK, and Europe, including 1,200 C-suite executives, they find that 29% of employees admit to actively sabotaging their company's AI strategy. That number jumps to 44% for Gen Z workers specifically. Evil little punks. The sabotage takes many forms: entering proprietary information into public AI tools, using unapproved tools, outright refusing to use AI tools, and most strikingly, some workers have admitted to intentionally generating low-quality outputs or tampering with performance reviews to make AI appear less effective. The primary driver, of course, is fear. 30% of saboteurs cite the fear that AI is going to take their job. Of course, they see the stories, the headlines out there, from Dario Amodei, from Microsoft, from pretty much every company out there. An MIT report also found that 95% of generative AI pilots at companies are failing because of the learning gap between tools and organizations. But on the flip side, if you are an AI super user, you get a lot of benefits. Super users are 3 times more likely to have received a promotion and pay raise in the past year, are nearly saving 9 hours per week compared to 2 hours for slow adopters. 60% of executives say they are considering cutting employees who refuse to adopt AI, and 77% say non-adopters will not be considered for a promotion or a leadership role. Now, the futurist lens here, and this is something that I find very interesting or ironic. And that is that when we talk about the employees who are not wanting to use the tools, we call them saboteurs. Now let's try to get in the mind of an employee. You're an employee at a company. You hear the stories and the narratives that AI is going to take a lot of jobs. You're not getting any clarity from your company around what this means for you or your job, but you're being forced to use this tool. And you're worried about your livelihood. You might have kids, a spouse, a mortgage payment, a car payment, and you know that these AI tools are potentially coming for you. And you also know your company is forcing you to use them. Now, if it comes down to your livelihood, protecting your family, things like that, wouldn't you be in the same spot? I'm not saying this is a wise choice or a strategic choice, but can you understand why it might potentially be a rational decision for employees to push back and to fight back against being forced to use the very tools that may be coming for their livelihood? Now, the irony here is that when the employee fights back, we call it sabotage. We call them saboteurs. But when the company is using AI to actively, or so they say, get rid of people, we call that strategy. And that is, I think, the brutal irony here. This is why one of the things that I've been saying for months now, every company, not just the vendors, but any company that is deploying these AI tools at scale needs to have, whether you want to call it an AI communications officer, whoever it is, an executive level role inside the company who is able to kind of paint the vision, sell the dream of AI, have the conversations with employees, help guide strategy, answer questions, be there to help change the narrative around these AI tools. Because the narrative across the board, I'm sorry for lack of a better word, it sucks. And we need these organizations to change their narrative, and nobody's doing it. Not the HR departments, not the leadership, nobody's doing it. We get the narrative from what we see the Anthropic putting out and ChatGPT putting out and the media publications putting out, which basically makes it sound like the end of the world. So if I'm getting that information and you're telling me now I have to use this tool, you really think I'm going to do it? It doesn't make sense. So that to me is the deeper irony here. When an employee is trying to preserve their livelihood and to take care of their family, it's sabotage. When the company tries to deploy the AI tools to get rid of the people, we call it strategy. Doesn't make any sense. The framing here is entirely loaded in a single direction, and I think it needs to change. So when 69% of executives at organizations are admitting that they're planning AI-related layoffs, and then they turn around and they call employees who try to push back against that saboteurs, that to me is a remarkable act of organizational gaslighting. You're telling me you're coming for me. It's out there. The firms are saying it. Executives are saying it. You're telling me you're coming for me. And I'm supposed to just, what? Do nothing? It's kind of like, not to use a brutal analogy, but it's kind of like if somebody's walking towards you with a knife and they're like, I'm not going to stab you. I'm not going to stab you. I'm not going to stab you. And you're like, oh, okay. And they're just getting closer and closer and closer and closer. And they're like, I'm not going to stab you. You're fine. Don't worry about it. I'm not going to, this knife is just going to, I'm just walking near you to say hi. I'm not going to stab you. And the employee or the other person is just to say, oh, okay. Yeah, I believe you. No, just keep getting closer to me with that knife. I believe you. I'm going to be totally fine. And then yank. That's kind of what's happening here in companies. And employees are now saying, I don't think I want you coming any closer to me. So, again, change the narrative. I don't think this is a particularly difficult thing to do. The counter narrative exists. Do a better job of communicating, painting the picture, telling the story, selling the dream, selling the vision. And I think the real competitive threat here is not the employee who is telling you they won't use ChatGPT. It's the executive who thinks that deploying these tools is the same thing as redesigning the company. And that, to me, I don't know, it doesn't make any sense. The approach that a lot of organizations are taking, it's almost as if they feel like they're going into a Staples or an Office Max. They're buying a box of pens, 20,000 pens. And then they're going to all their employees and they're saying, use this pen, use this pen, use this pen, use this pen. And the employees are like, what now? What are you talking about? In other words, we're not making any changes to the company. We're just going to the store, we're buying some new tools and flicking them at your head and saying, you got to use that now. You can't just drop these things into existing workflows, call it transformation, and then blame the workers when nothing changes and when they push back. The workers who are actually dragging their feet might be the canary in the coal mine. They might be the ones out there who are telling you that your organizational AI strategy is incoherent. And they're telling you that before it's going to show up in your quarterly numbers. So instead of trying to kick those people out, maybe you should be saying, hey, you know what? Maybe we should talk. Maybe you should help me understand what we can do to change the narrative, to do a better job with our strategy. Again, something to pay attention to, but I think this idea of sabotage is a pretty interesting one to be thinking about. Story 2, Project Glasswing. This has been trending. I think it's trending on LinkedIn today as well. It's one of the top stories. This really came about because Claude leaked their new product. Anthropic leaked their new Mythos product. Now, before I get into story number 2 and unpack that in more detail, if you like the podcast, please do me a favor, especially when I have to re-record episodes like this. So you listen to it and you think, oh, Jacob's just talking for 30, 40 minutes. But it actually takes a lot of time to prepare the episode, to come up with a script, to find the stories, to check the data, to record the episode, to have to re-record the episode if the internet goes out, for my team to look at things, for us to chop things up, to put it online. It's a lot of work to put these daily episodes up. And I started doing them, I think earlier this year. So still fairly new, getting a lot of great feedback on them. So I appreciate the emails, the people who have been giving me the reviews. We have 250 reviews on Apple, making it, I think, the most popular future of work podcast that's out there. But we can always use your help and support. I don't ask you for money. I don't ask you for donations. I just ask, leave a review. Just rate the podcast on Apple or on Spotify or whatever your preferred channel is. Just take literally 3 seconds, hit however many stars you think it is. If you want to leave a comment on there for my team and I, great. But you don't even have to do that. You could just click however many stars and then carry on with your day. And if you're watching on YouTube, the vast majority of people who watch on YouTube consume the content pretty much every day, but you're not subscribed to the channel. Also totally free. All these things are free. If you subscribe on YouTube, all it's going to do is just notify you when the new episodes go up. And all of these things help the show get discovered in algorithms. I don't know if you saw, but Spotify actually came out recently with a new feature where you can prompt engineer and discover new podcast episodes and shows. They filter it by keywords, by topics, by things that you put into the prompt. And of course, one of the things they look at are reviews. So the more reviews we get, the more episodes I can do, the better guests I can bring in, etc. So please take a couple seconds and just leave a review for the show. Story 2, Project Glasswing. So again, Anthropic today, but I think this announcement actually came out yesterday. They announced Project Glasswing, a major cybersecurity initiative, bringing together some of the biggest names in tech: AWS, Apple, Cisco, CrowdStrike, Google, JP Morgan Chase, the Linux Foundation, Microsoft, NVIDIA, and Palo Alto Networks. All of these companies organized around a single, unreleased AI model called Claude Mythos Preview. So what is this model about, and why does it warrant this kind of a potentially crazy response? So what happened, if you haven't been following the story, is that Mythos Preview has autonomously found thousands of previously unknown security flaws called zero-day vulnerabilities. And they found these things hidden in some of the world's most critical software. We're talking about flaws buried inside operating systems, running your laptop, the browsers you use every day, the infrastructure that powers banks and hospitals, power grids, government institutions. And to understand how significant this is, you have to understand something called OpenBSD. OpenBSD is a specialized operating system, and basically what it does is it is used to run firewalls, kind of the digital gatekeepers that sit between the public internet and sensitive information that might exist inside your organization's four walls or inside of governments. And it has a 30-year reputation as being the most security-hardened pieces of software that's ever been built. Thousands of expert security researchers have scrutinized every single line of its code, and Mythos Preview found a 27-year-old flaw inside it, a hidden door that had been there since 1999 that would allow any attacker to basically remotely crash any machine running it just by connecting to it over the internet. No special access required. It also found a 16-year-old bug inside FFmpeg, which is the invisible software engine that encodes and decodes video in virtually every app you've ever used. Automated testing tools had basically run past that specific line of code over 5 million times without catching it. And it chained together several flaws in the Linux kernel, which is the core software running most of the world's servers, to give an attacker complete control of a machine from an ordinary user account. So all those vulnerabilities have, of course, now been patched. Anthropic is committing $100 million in usage credits, tokens, to the initiative, $4 million in donations to open source security organizations, and has confirmed it will not make Mythos preview generally available, at least not yet. The company has also been in discussions with US government officials about the model's capabilities. Now, the futurist lens here, Project Glasswing is actually evidence that we may have already lost the race that we thought we were running. For 30 years, 3 decades, cybersecurity experts and the industry as a whole operated on one core assumption, and that is that the best human experts, given enough time and the right tools, could find and fix critical flaws in our most important software. And that assumption is now dead. A single AI model running autonomously for just a few weeks found more critical vulnerabilities in hardened, well-scrutinized software than the entire global security community had found in years. Think about that for a minute. And the model didn't just find these things faster, it found things that were functionally invisible to humans. I mean, imagine a 27-year-old security flaw that survived decades of expert review. And that's not just an improvement in an old model, that's a different category of capability entirely. Now, Anthropic is framing this as a defensive initiative, right? They're basically positioning it as, well, we found these vulnerabilities so we can fix them before the bad guys do. And that might be true. But think about what this announcement actually does. And I don't think anybody's talking about this. It establishes Anthropic as potentially the most important cybersecurity company in the world. Without them actually even being in the cybersecurity business, which is the crazy thing. They are not a cybersecurity company, but are now potentially the most important cybersecurity company in the world. Does that make sense? It's like they're not in the industry, but now they kind of are. Every enterprise, every government, every critical infrastructure operator around the world just learned that the people with the most powerful offensive cyber capability on the planet now work inside of Anthropic. I think this is an extraordinary amount of leverage for the company. Project Glasswing, whatever else it is also a statement of power. And I think it can speak to potential evolutions for the company. I mean, are we talking about a new Palantir potentially? A new tech powerhouse that's going to unleash capabilities that will propel Anthropic purely from being an AI company to being able to dominate any industry that it chooses to set its eyes on? Maybe. I don't know. Now, I think the future of work implication here is that the entire profession of cybersecurity is being restructured in real time. And most of the people in it don't even know that this is happening. The execution layer, where you're doing things like finding vulnerabilities, writing exploits, running penetration tests, that's all being automated. And I think the jobs that are going to survive will be the ones that sit above that layer. These are going to be the people who direct AI systems, who govern the outputs, who interpret results in the context of organizational risk, the people who make the judgment calls that AI is not able to make or that no model should make alone. I don't think the field is disappearing, but it's certainly being elevated. And whether the people in it are currently ready for it or not, it is happening. Story 3, last story of the day, Google's AI overview. Google's AI overviews are wrong 1 in 10 times. So we're going to unpack exactly what that means. Now, before I get into that story, if you are interested in these topics on the future of work, check out futureofworkleaders.com. It's a private, exclusive CHRO group that I run. We have almost 40 chief human resource officers from companies around the world. like Lego, like Novartis, like Tractor Supply, like Western Digital, Lumen, PNC Bank, all chief human resource officers. We get together virtually every month. In fact, our next meeting at the end of April is going to be on whether or not the CHRO should own AI. A lot of debate in that space. So if you like these types of topics, and if you're listening and watching, you're a chief human resource or chief people officer only, you can learn more and check us out at futureofworkleaders.com. This is, I think, an awesome group for anybody out there thinking about the future of work. Okay, so story 3, a new analysis conducted by the New York Times in partnership with AI startup Oumi, O-U-M-I, you can pronounce that how you want, Oumi, finds that Google's AI overviews, and these are the AI-generated summaries that now appear at the very top of Google search results, above all the other links, they are wrong approximately 1 in 10 times. Now, Oumi tested 4,326 Google searches using a widely used industry benchmark for measuring AI factual accuracy. With Google's previous model, AI overviews were accurate 85% of the time. After an upgrade to their newer model, accuracy improved to 91%. Now, that sounds good until you start to do some of the math here. And this is math at Google scale. Google processes more than 5 trillion, with a T, searches every year. So at a 9% error rate, that produces tens of millions of incorrect answers every single hour. Hundreds of thousands every minute. A second finding is in some ways even more troubling than the first. Even when the answers are correct, 56% of them were ungrounded, meaning the sources that Google cited alongside the answer don't actually support what the AI said. The AI got more accurate, but simultaneously got worse at being able to show its work. The analysis also found that the system can be gamed. A BBC journalist published a fake blog post, and within a day, Google was presenting his fictional information as established fact. Google pushed back, calling the study flawed and arguing the benchmark doesn't reflect real-world searches. Google's own internal testing found that its model hallucinates 28% of the time when operating without search data feeding it. This is a very common problem with these models. I mean, even today, as I was preparing for this podcast, I was going through a couple stories and trying to validate them, and I found a few articles that I wanted to talk about today, and I put them into Claude. And I was asking it to pull out kind of key points and summaries and stuff like that. And I noticed that one of the stories it was talking about, I don't know where it got the story from. Like, I'm trying to scroll through Anthropic here to see if I can find it. Oh, yeah, here it is. So I put 3 stories. I put 3 links into Claude to pull out some stats and things like that. And one was the Gen Z story, which I covered. Story number 3 was Glasswing, which was actually story number 2. And then it gave me a story, the CEO who fired 80% of staff for refusing AI and says he'd do it again. And I looked at that, I'm like, what the hell? I never even inputted that link into Claude. That story was from January earlier this year. And apparently this is from the CEO of enterprise software, Ignite Tech. And I don't know where Claude got that story. I don't know how it pulled it up. It wasn't in any of my chats, in any of my discussions. It wasn't a prompt. It wasn't a topic. It was nothing. And so then I asked Claude, I'm like, where did this come from? And it just says, oh yeah, sorry, my bad. I just kind of pulled that in on my own. I mean, you got to check these things, right? And it'd be a little weird if I just started reading that without checking it. So yeah, these things hallucinate. They make mistakes. Now, the futurist lens here, I think the number that deserves the most attention here is not the 9%, it's the 56%. And that is the share of correct answers where the cited sources actually don't back up the claim. Because that number should reveal something that makes you very uncomfortable. Meaning Google's AI is getting better at sounding right while simultaneously getting worse at being actually right. And those are two very completely different things. And so sometimes even when I'm using these AI tools, I have to be very specific. I only want reliable and credible sources. Like sometimes it'll feed me stuff and it'll give me some like random blog or whatever. And I'm like, nope. I don't want any of that. I only want credible news sources. Bloomberg, Reuters, Fast Company, Axios, major news publications who I would hope do fact checking. And even then, I go through and I make sure as best as I can to double check the things that I'm getting are actually appearing in the story, whether it's quotes or stats, etc. So, I mean, it's interesting because if you don't do that, you can take at face value whatever these AI tools are giving you, and you don't know who they're citing. Is it a blog? Is it Fox News? Is it some guy sitting in his basement? Is it CNN? What is it? Where's it coming from? Give me some credible and reliable sources. Now, everyone is treating this as a potentially Google problem, but it's not. I think it's a fundamental property of how large language models actually work at scale. Google just happens to be the biggest, most visible example of it. And even in the Atlanta event that I held for our CHRO group, Future of Work Leaders, we had an engineer, a scientist from Georgia Tech come and explain how these LLMs work. And it's very fascinating when you get into the details of how these things actually work, because really what they're doing is they just kind of predict the next word in a sequence of words in a lot of times. Right? They look for the plausible, the most plausible answer sounds like based on patterns in their training data. So they try to predict the next word, try to anticipate what's going to come next. And the problem is, again, not that Google is bad. It's that it's deployed in a context. And at the top of the world's most trusted search engine, it's presented with the visual confidence of an encyclopedia that wildly overstates what the technology is actually capable of, because, again, you don't know the sources. And if you double check the sources, you might realize, I don't believe it. So we're systematically building these AI tools. We're systematically deploying these AI tools into the information retrieval workflow of pretty much every organization on the planet. And we're doing it before we've actually solved the accountability question. And that's the creepy thing. We're deploying these things at scale before we know that they work, and that they work well, and that they are accurate, and that the sources are accurate, and that it's not making things up. When a worker at your company is going to look up, for example, a regulatory deadline, a policy on your competitor, a fact from a client, and when they get the wrong answer from their AI tool, who's going to be responsible for the bad decision that follows? Right now, the answer is the worker. Google puts a small disclaimer at the bottom of all of their overview results. So does Anthropic. Like right now I have Anthropic open and it says, Claude is AI and can make mistakes. Please double check responses. ChatGPT has something similar. So they're putting these little disclaimers everywhere. Like, hey, I know we say we're going to take jobs and we're amazing and we're perfect, but double check your work. Again, a little bit of irony here. We're going to take over the world. We're so good. We're so capable. We're exposing vulnerabilities. We have this new AI tool that nobody's ever seen. It's amazing, but just double check in case we make a mistake. It's kind of funny to think about it like that. And so we've created a system where the interface says, trust this, but then in the fine print, it says, verify everything. And obviously the trust us is much louder with the megaphone, and the verify everything is in the tiny small print at the bottom of the page. And if you don't see it, you're not going to know that you should be verifying it. But trust us, we're amazing. We got the latest cool tools and blah, 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 blah. How do those two messages coexist at scale? Of trust us and verify everything. It's kind of, I mean, it really is comical when you think about it. And until that tension gets resolved, every organization relying on AI-assisted tools, information retrieval, anything related to AI, we all have a silent accuracy problem that we are not measuring or thinking about. Like this test that was done at Google, how many companies out there are doing these tests internally? How many of you are doing your own internal tests to verify the accuracy of the results that your employees are getting? Verifying the sources that your employees are using, double checking the analysis that the AI tools are putting out. How many of you are actually doing that? I actually can't think of anybody off the top of my head who's doing that. I mean, maybe an employee individually will flag something if they see it, but are we actually measuring and tracking this at scale? I don't think so. So those are the top stories of the day that I wanted to get to. If you have any questions, comments, you want to challenge me on something, disagree with me, or just say nice things, email me, jacob@thefutureorganization.com. I'm going to be working on my new newsletter, hopefully going up tomorrow. You can go to futureofworknewsletter.com to get to my Substack. And I'm going to leave you with a quote from Voltaire. We're getting philosophical. Doubt is not a pleasant condition, but certainty is an absurd one. Again, doubt is not a pleasant condition, but certainty is an absurd one. Thank you so much for tuning in, for watching, for listening. I will be back tomorrow. Have a great rest of your day.